Marcus Washington stood in the marble foyer of the Pemberton estate, delivery bag in hand, watching a $20 bill float down toward the imported Italian tiles. It landed between his worn Nikes, the ones he'd resoled twice because new shoes weren't in the budget. "Keep the change," Richard Pemberton said, not looking up from his phone. "That's more than you'll see in tips all week, I'd imagine." The house smelled like money. Not new money, old money, the kind that came with oil paintings of ancestors, a circular driveway, and the particular silence that exists only in homes where no one worries about anything. Marcus had delivered to this address 14 times in the past 3 months. Pemberton never remembered his face. "Thank you, sir," Marcus said, bending to pick up the bill. His knee cracked, the left one, the one that still bothered him from his college football days, the injury that ended his scholarship, the injury that changed everything. "You know what your problem is?" Pemberton's voice stopped Marcus mid-turn. "People like you, delivery drivers, service workers, you never think beyond the next paycheck. No vision, no strategy." Marcus turned slowly. Pemberton was maybe 55, silver-haired, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than Marcus's rent. Behind him, through floor-to-ceiling windows, Marcus could see a pool house, and what looked like a tennis court. "Sir, I was at a charity gala last week. Another one of these things where everyone pretends to care about poverty." Pemberton walked to a bar cart, poured himself scotch from a crystal decanter, and I told them, I said, the problem isn't lack of opportunity, it's lack of intelligence. Poor people make poor decisions. It's simple mathematics. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd been delivering food for 2 years, ever since the insurance company he'd worked for downsized and his position became redundant. 2 years of 12-hour days, of missing his daughter's soccer games, of choosing between paying the electric bill and buying Zoe new school clothes. "I should get going," Marcus said. "Other deliveries." "See? That's exactly what I mean." Pemberton took a sip, gestured with his glass. "No curiosity, no engagement. I just offered you insight into how wealth actually works. And you can't wait to leave. Show me one smart move you've made in the past year, one strategic decision that improved your situation." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not anger exactly, but something colder and more focused. "Have a good evening, Mr. Pemberton." Outside, the autumn air bit through Marcus's thin jacket. October in Connecticut could be brutal, especially at night. He sat in his 2009 Honda Civic, 219, 0 miles, check engine light permanently on, and didn't start the engine. His phone showed 6 more deliveries queued up. If he hustled, he might clear another $40 before midnight. His hands were shaking, not from cold, from rage, from humiliation, from 2 years of swallowing his pride every time someone looked through him like he was furniture. Marcus had a master's degree in business administration. He'd graduated with honors from UConn. He'd published 2 papers on sustainable urban development. He'd been going somewhere once. He could still remember the day they'd bought their first house, a modest 3-bedroom in Bridgeport. Nothing fancy, but theirs. Sarah had cried in the empty living room, sitting on the floor because they didn't have furniture yet, and she'd said, "We did it, Marcus. We actually did it." He'd been 28 years old and believed that hard work and intelligence were enough, that the American dream wasn't a myth but a formula. Education plus effort equals security. Then Sarah got sick. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. Discovered too late because their insurance had a high deductible and she'd been ignoring symptoms to avoid the cost of doctor's visits. The treatments were experimental, expensive, not fully covered. They'd mortgaged the house, maxed out credit cards. Marcus had worked 70-hour weeks while trying to be present for Zoe, for Sarah, for the impossible mathematics of keeping a family intact while it was being systematically destroyed. The insurance company had been sympathetic in their emails. "We understand this is a difficult time." But when the layoffs came, Marcus's position was among the first eliminated. 12 years of service, performance reviews that praised his analytical skills and dedication, none of it mattered. He was a line item on a spreadsheet, and the line was deleted. Sarah died on a Tuesday in March, with spring rain against the hospice windows and Zoe asleep in a chair beside the bed. Marcus had held her hand and felt the moment she left, felt the absence like a physical weight. The funeral cost $8,000 they didn't have. The house went into foreclosure 4 months later, and here he was now, 2 years later, delivering pad thai to people who lived in houses with circular driveways and pools, people who would never know what it felt like to choose between your wife's medication and your daughter's winter coat. He pulled out his phone, but not to check the next delivery. He opened the Notes app, where he'd been keeping something, a plan, an idea that had started small and grown, like a seed cracking through concrete. 3 weeks ago, delivering to a different mansion in the same neighborhood, Marcus had overheard a conversation. 2 men on a back patio, thinking they were alone, discussing a property development deal. Public land that was about to be rezoned. A shopping center being planned. The kind of information that moved money. Marcus had done nothing with it. Because what could he do? He had $347 in his checking account, but tonight something broke. Or maybe something formed. Pemberton's words circled in his mind. "Show me one smart move." Marcus opened his banking app. $347 done. 62. His next paycheck came Friday. Maybe $580 after taxes. Rent was due in 3 days. Zoe needed new winter boots. The car needed an oil change. He opened a different app, one he'd downloaded a month ago but never used. Real estate investing, crowdfunding, small shares in commercial properties, minimum investment. $500. It was insane. It was reckless. It was everything a responsible father shouldn't do. Marcus thought about Pemberton's face, the casual cruelty, the assumption that people like Marcus were poor because they were stupid, not because the system was rigged, not because one medical emergency could destroy everything you'd built. He thought about Zoe, 8 years old now, asking him why they couldn't go to Disneyland like her friend Emma, asking him why he was never home, asking him if Mommy was watching from heaven and if she was proud. Marcus closed the app. Started the car. His phone buzzed. Another delivery request. Indian food to the north side. $6.50 plus tip. But as he pulled out of Pemberton's circular driveway, past the fountain and the manicured hedges and the 3-car garage, he wasn't thinking about the next delivery. He was thinking about the conversation he'd overheard, about the rezoning meeting that was scheduled for next Tuesday, about public records that were available to anyone who knew where to look, about the difference between being smart and being lucky, and how sometimes the smart move was recognizing when the two intersected. Marcus drove 3 blocks, pulled into a 7-Eleven parking lot and made a phone call. "Kevin, it's Marcus. Yeah, I know it's late. Listen, remember when you said you had some money saved up? That you were looking for investment opportunities?" Kevin Chen had been his study partner in business school. Now he managed a mid-level investment fund, the kind that handled retirement accounts for teachers and firefighters. They'd stayed in touch, loosely, Facebook birthday messages, occasional texts. "I've got something," Marcus said, "but I need you to trust me, and I need you to move fast." The convenience store's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Through the window, Marcus could see the clerk scrolling on his phone, a customer buying lottery tickets, the ordinary machinery of hope and chance. "There's a town council meeting Tuesday night, rezoning discussion. A piece of land on Mitchell Road is about to become commercial. There's a developer ready to move. If you can get ahead of it, if we can get ahead of it, there's money to be made." Kevin was quiet for a moment. "This is insider information. It's public information." Marcus said carefully. Just information that most people aren't paying attention to. The meeting's open to everyone. The records are public. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Another pause. Marcus could hear Kevin breathing, calculating. How much are we talking about? For you, however much you want to put in. For me, everything I have, which is about $500. Kevin laughed, but it wasn't a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of someone who remembered what it was like to be hungry. Marcus, man, that's your rent money. I know what it is. If this goes wrong, I know, but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of playing it safe and getting nowhere. Show me one smart move, right? This is it. Marcus didn't tell Kevin about Pemberton. Didn't tell him about the humiliation, the $20 bill on the floor, the casual dismissal of his entire existence. That wasn't professional. That wasn't strategic, but it was fuel, and sometimes fuel was exactly what you needed. I'll do some research, Kevin said finally. Look into the zoning records, check the developer permits. If this checks out, I can put in maybe $50,000. But Marcus, you need to understand the risk. This could be a legitimate opportunity, or it could be nothing. Real estate development falls through all the time. I understand. And if you lose that $500, then I lose it, and I work harder, and I find another way. After they hung up, Marcus sat in the parking lot for 10 more minutes. His phone kept buzzing with delivery requests. He ignored them. Instead, he opened his banking app again, stared at the balance. $347.62. He thought about what that money represented. 3 days of deliveries, 63 orders, 420 miles on a car that was already dying. Tips from people who either didn't look at him or looked through him. Every dollar earned by making himself smaller, more invisible, more acceptable to people who had everything. What if he just kept doing this? Kept grinding, kept delivering, kept surviving? In 5 years, he might save enough for a down payment on a used car that didn't break down every month. In 10 years, maybe he could afford to move to a slightly better apartment. In 20 years, Zoe would be grown and gone, and he'd still be here, still delivering, still invisible. Or he could make a different choice. Marcus transferred $500 from checking to the investment platform. The app asked him to confirm. His finger hovered over the button. This was insane. This was irresponsible. This was everything a good father shouldn't do. He pressed confirm. The transaction processed. His balance dropped to $47.62. Marcus felt sick. The number on the screen seemed to pulse with accusation. That was their grocery money. That was the buffer between them and complete disaster. He'd just gambled it on incomplete information and the hope that he was smarter than he'd been allowed to be. Then the sick feeling passed, and he felt something else. Lightness. Like he'd been carrying a weight he didn't know existed and had just set it down. For 2 years he'd played it safe, worked hard, followed rules, accepted his place in the hierarchy, and where had it gotten him? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Marcus started the car and went back to work, but everything felt different now. Each delivery was no longer just a transaction, it was reconnaissance. Each wealthy neighborhood was no longer just a reminder of what he didn't have, it was a data point. Each conversation he overheard was no longer background noise, it was potential intelligence. He delivered Korean barbecue to a lawyer's house in Darien. The lawyer was on his phone on the porch, talking about a client who was developing waterfront properties in Norwalk. Marcus made note of it. He delivered sushi to a family in New Canaan. Through the open door, he heard the husband telling his wife about a tech company that was looking at office space in Stamford. Marcus made note of it. He delivered Italian food to an elderly couple in Greenwich. The woman mentioned that their neighbor was a city councilman who'd been complaining about rezoning requests. Marcus made note of it. By the end of the night, He had 6 more deliveries completed and a notebook full of fragments. Individually, they meant nothing. But Marcus had always been good at pattern recognition, at seeing connections others missed. That's what had made him valuable at the insurance company, back when being valuable had mattered. He started the car and went back to work. 6 more deliveries, $40 more. A smile for every customer, a thank you for every tip, the invisible machinery of service work grinding on into the night. But something had changed. He'd made a move, smart or stupid, time would tell. But he'd done something. He'd stepped off the treadmill, even if only for a moment. When he got home at 1:47 a.m., Zoe was asleep on the couch. Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who watched her, was asleep in the chair, a novel open in her lap. Marcus paid her the $20 he owed, plus the $20 Pemberton had given him. $40 for 4 hours of childcare. She tried to refuse the extra, but Marcus insisted. "You do too much," Mrs. Patterson said at the door, bundled in her coat. "You're going to burn out." "I'm all right. Sarah would want you to take care of yourself." "I know." After she left, Marcus carried Zoe to her bedroom. She stirred, mumbled something about soccer practice. He kissed her forehead, pulled the blankets up to her chin. In the kitchen, he made instant coffee and opened his laptop. Public records, zoning maps, developer permits, meeting minutes from the town council, everything Kevin would be looking at, but from a different angle. Marcus had always been good at research, at finding patterns, at connecting dots that seemed unrelated. By 4 a.m., he had a clearer picture. The land on Mitchell Road, the developer, a company called Hartfield and Associates, the timeline, the potential. By 5 a.m., he'd found something else, a smaller opportunity, adjacent property, undeveloped, currently zoned residential. But if the Mitchell Road project went through, the ripple effect would be significant. By 6 a.m., Marcus had a plan, not just for one investment, but for 3. Not just for real estate, but for positioning himself where information flowed. Not just for making money, but for changing the entire geometry of his life. Zoe woke up at 7:15, came shuffling into the kitchen in her Minnie Mouse pajamas. "Daddy, you didn't sleep again." "I slept a little." "Liar." She said it with love, climbing into his lap. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood. "Daddy's working on something. Another delivery thing? Something different. Something better. Better than pizza delivery? Much better than pizza delivery." She studied his face with those serious brown eyes, Sarah's eyes. "Are we going to be okay?" "Yeah, baby, we're going to be okay." It was the first time in 2 years he'd said those words and actually believed them, not because the investment would work. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe he'd just thrown away $500 they desperately needed, but because he'd made a choice, he'd taken a risk. He'd refused to accept the script that people like Pemberton wrote for people like him. That Tuesday, Marcus didn't work the dinner shift. Instead, he put on his only suit, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral, and attended the town council meeting. He sat in the back, took notes, watched who spoke and who stayed silent, who had power and who pretended to. The rezoning passed unanimously. Mitchell Road would become commercial. Hartfield and Associates had the inside track, everything Marcus had predicted. He texted Kevin, "It's happening." Kevin texted back, "I'm in. 50,000 on Hartfield adjacent properties. Your 500 is already up 40%. Marcus stared at his phone. 40%. That meant his $500 was now worth $700. $200 profit in 4 days. It wasn't life-changing, but it was something. It was proof. That night he drove back to Pemberton's house, not for a delivery, just to look at it, to remind himself what he was fighting against, not the man himself, but what he represented. The certainty that some people mattered and others didn't, the casual cruelty of inherited wealth. The assumption that poverty was a moral failing rather than a structural violence. Marcus sat in his car across the street, engine off, watching the lights in those massive windows. "One smart move," he said to the empty car. "You wanted one smart move." He didn't know yet if what he'd done would work. The investment could still collapse. The development could fall through. 100 things could go wrong. But for the first time in 2 years, Marcus Washington felt like himself again. Not a delivery driver, not a widower, not a struggling single father. A player, someone who saw the board and made moves. And that feeling, that reclamation of identity, was worth more than any return on investment. 3 weeks later, Marcus sat in a Dunkin' Donuts on Route 9, laptop open, watching his investment portfolio like it was a heartbeat monitor. The Mitchell Road project was moving forward. His initial $500 had grown to $240. Kevin's $50, $100 was now worth $71. "Not bad for a delivery driver," Kevin said, sliding into the booth across from him. He looked the same as he had in business school. Wire-rimmed glasses, perpetually wrinkled Oxford shirt. The energy of someone who consumed too much coffee and not enough sleep. "I'm still delivering," Marcus said. 4 nights a week. Can't quit until this is more stable." "You should be looking at the next opportunity." Kevin pulled out his own laptop. "The Hartfield project proved you've got an eye for this. What else are you seeing?" Marcus had been thinking about exactly that. The past 3 weeks, while delivering pad thai and chicken wings across Fairfield County, he'd been listening, really listening, to conversations on porches, to phone calls overheard through open windows, to the casual intelligence that flowed through wealthy neighborhoods like weather. "There's a woman," Marcus said, "lives on Ridgemont Drive. I deliver to her twice a week. She's got a standing order from that Thai place on Post Road. She's a city planner, works for Stamford." "Okay." Last Tuesday, she was on her phone on the porch, talking about a waterfront development proposal, something about the Marina District getting overhauled, mixed use, high-end retail, the whole thing. Kevin leaned forward. "Stamford's waterfront has been dead for a decade. If they're really planning a revitalization, property values in the adjacent blocks would spike before the public announcement." "How solid is this information?" Marcus shook his head. "That's the problem. I only heard one side of one conversation. I'd need confirmation, more data points." "You'd need access." "Right." They sat in silence for a moment. Through the window, Marcus could see the parking lot, cars coming and going, people living their lives. His phone buzzed. Delivery request. Vietnamese restaurant to the east side. He declined it. "I've been thinking," Marcus said slowly, "about what you said before, about information flow. Most people doing delivery work, they're invisible. They're furniture. Like Pemberton said, no one really sees them. Pemberton, the guy who triggered this whole thing? Yeah, he was an asshole, but he wasn't completely wrong. I was invisible. I was in survival mode, not thinking strategically. But being invisible, that's actually an advantage. I'm in these houses, these neighborhoods, and people talk around me like I'm not there." Kevin's expression shifted. "You're building an intelligence network. I'm listening to what's already being said. There's a difference between overhearing public information and what? Using my ears? Last time I checked, there's no law against paying attention." Marcus kept his voice level, but there was an edge to it. "These people, they don't think twice about discussing million-dollar deals in front of the help. That's on them, not me." Kevin was quiet, calculating. Marcus knew what he was thinking. The ethical gray area, the potential legal complications, the risk. "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," Marcus said. "I'm asking you to help me understand what I'm hearing. You've got the financial expertise. I've got access. We both benefit. And your other delivery driver friends? You recruiting them too?" Marcus hadn't thought of that. But now that Kevin said it, the possibility opened up like a door he hadn't known existed. "Maybe," Marcus said. "There's a guy, Darius, does the same circuit I do. We see each other at pickup points. He's sharp, observant. Former paralegal before student loans buried him. You trust him?" "I trust that he needs money, and he's tired of being treated like he's nobody." Kevin closed his laptop. "Marcus, I want to be clear about something. What you're describing, building a network of service workers to gather information, that's starting to sound like corporate espionage. It's pattern recognition. It's public information, assembled from fragments. No one's breaking into offices or hacking emails. But you're systematizing it. You're creating a structure." "Yes, I am." Marcus met Kevin's eyes. "Because I'm tired of playing a rigged game with one hand tied behind my back. These people, they network at country clubs and charity galas. They share information over golf and cocktails. Why shouldn't we have our own network?" Kevin rubbed his face. "Because we don't have lawyers on retainer if something goes wrong. Then we make sure nothing goes wrong." They left it there. Kevin promised to think about it, to do some research on the legal boundaries, to explore what was possible without crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Marcus went back to work. 4 deliveries that night, $42 in earnings. But his mind was elsewhere, assembling pieces of a larger puzzle. At home, after Zoe was asleep, he made a list. Every delivery driver he knew personally. Every regular customer whose conversations had revealed something useful. Every neighborhood where information seemed to flow more freely. Then he made another list. Public records he could access, town council meetings he could attend, community forums and planning sessions that were open to anyone who bothered to show up. The next day, he reached out to Darius Martinez. They met at a gas station between deliveries, standing by the air pump, speaking in the shorthand of people who understood scarcity. "I've got something," Marcus said, "an opportunity. But I need to know if you're interested in making real money or if you're comfortable where you are." Darius laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Comfortable? Man, I'm one car breakdown away from homelessness. My daughter needs braces. My mom needs medication. Comfortable is a fantasy." "Then listen." Marcus explained the Mitchell Road investment, the return, the method, the possibility. "You're telling me you made over $1,000 just by paying attention?" Darius said. "By paying attention and having someone who could act on the information. That's the key. You need both. I've got the access. Kevin's got the capital. But there's more opportunity than one person can track. You want me to spy on customers. I want you to listen, to remember, to share what you're already hearing anyway." Darius was quiet for a long time. Cars came and went. Someone was screaming at their kids in a minivan. Life continued around them, messy and desperate and ordinary. 10% sounds low," Darius said finally. "I'm taking all the risk on the ground. If someone figures out what we're doing, I'm the one who gets fired, gets blacklisted, maybe gets sued." Marcus hadn't expected negotiation, but he respected it. "What do you think is fair?" 20%, and I want it in writing. Writing creates a paper trail. That's dangerous for both of us." "Then I need your word, and I need to know. If this goes wrong, if I lose my job over this, you'll help me. Reference, connections, whatever you've got." Marcus thought about it. Darius was right to ask for more. The risk wasn't evenly distributed. Marcus had Kevin to protect him, to handle the legal complications. Darius just had a delivery bag and bills he couldn't pay. 20%, Marcus agreed. "And my word, if this costs you your job, I'll do everything I can to help you land somewhere better." They shook hands in the fluorescent light of the gas station. Two men who'd been made invisible by the economy, making a pact to reclaim their power. "What exactly am I listening for?" Darius asked. "Anything about property transactions. Development projects, businesses opening or closing, government contracts, city planning, infrastructure projects, anything that suggests money is about to move from one place to another. That's a lot. And start with what you notice naturally. Don't force it. Don't change your behavior. The moment you start acting different, people will notice, and then we're done. Darius nodded. When do I report what I find? We'll set up an encrypted messaging app. No phones, no emails, no trail. You see something, you log it. I'll verify it against public records. If it checks out, Kevin makes the investment. When it pays off, you get your cut. What if Kevin doesn't want to invest in something? Then we don't invest. This only works if everyone agrees. No pressure, no forced plays. We're not gambling, we're strategic. Over the next week, Darius sent his first reports. They were raw, unfiltered observations. Family in Westport talking about their friend who works for the transit authority. New train station being considered for the Saugatuck area. Couple in Fairfield discussing their investment club. Mentioned a shopping plaza near the university is being sold. Owner is motivated. Lawyer on the phone. Sounded like he was representing a hospital group looking at properties in Bridgeport. Marcus spent hours verifying each piece of information. Public records, zoning applications, meeting minutes. Most of Darius's intelligence was accurate but not actionable, either too vague or too far in the future. But two tips stood out. The Saugatuck train station had been proposed 5 years ago, shelved, and was quietly being revived. Property values within a mile radius would spike if it went through. The Bridgeport Hospital Group was legitimate, a regional healthcare network expanding into underserved areas. If they bought land, surrounding properties would benefit. Kevin agreed to invest $15 in each opportunity. Marcus put in another $200, all he could spare from his last paycheck. Over the next month, the network grew. Not big. Marcus was careful about that. Just 5 people. Delivery drivers, Uber drivers, a home healthcare aide who worked in the wealthiest zip codes. People who were invisible but everywhere. People who heard things. The information started flowing. A construction contract coming up for bid. A restaurant chain scouting locations. A tech company considering Connecticut for a satellite office. Small pieces, individually meaningless, but together they formed a picture. Kevin invested strategically, spreading risk across multiple opportunities. Some succeeded, some failed, but the overall trend was up. By the end of November, Marcus's initial $500 had grown to $3,800. Kevin's portfolio had expanded by $180. The network's cut was growing too. Darius made $200 on a single tip about a grocery store expansion. A woman named Keisha, who cleaned houses in Greenwich, earned $500 for information about a luxury condo development. Marcus still worked deliveries 4 nights a week, still drove the same failing Honda, still worried about rent and Zoe's school expenses, but something fundamental had shifted. He had options now. He had momentum. He had proof that intelligence and strategy could compete with inherited wealth. One Friday night, delivering to a familiar address on Pemberton Street, not his house, but close, Marcus saw him. Richard Pemberton getting out of a Mercedes S-Class, heading into a neighbor's house, some kind of dinner party. Pemberton glanced at Marcus, glanced away. No recognition. Why would there be? Marcus was just the delivery guy. But this time Marcus didn't feel the rage. He felt something colder and more useful. He felt patient. Because while Pemberton was at dinner parties, Marcus was building something. While Pemberton was secure in his assumptions about how the world worked, Marcus was quietly rewriting the rules. It would take time. It would take discipline. But Marcus was playing a different game now. Not the game of labor for wages, but the game of information for power. And he was getting very good at it. At home that night, Zoe showed him a math test. 96%. 3 problems wrong. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I know you wanted 100. Marcus pulled her into a hug. Baby, 96 is amazing. I'm so proud of you. Really? Really? You know what 96 means? It means you're learning. It means you're trying. That's all that matters. She hugged him back, small arms around his neck, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle over him like a familiar coat. This wasn't just about proving Pemberton wrong. It wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about building a life where Zoe never had to choose between school supplies and groceries, where she could dream without the weight of financial anxiety crushing those dreams before they had a chance to grow. That was the smart move. Not one investment, but a whole new way of seeing the world. And Marcus was just getting started. The first warning came in January, buried in a forwarded email from Kevin. Might want to read this, the subject line said. The email was from a compliance attorney at Kevin's firm. 3 paragraphs of dense legal language that boiled down to one thing. Someone had noticed the unusual trading patterns. Someone was asking questions. Marcus read it twice, sitting in his car between deliveries, winter wind rattling the windows. His hands went cold. They can't prove anything, Kevin said when Marcus called. We haven't broken any laws. Everything we've done is based on public information, pattern recognition, timing. But it looks suspicious. A mid-level fund manager suddenly making perfect calls on local development deals. Someone's gonna dig deeper. Marcus thought about the network. 5 people. Now 6, each one contributing fragments of information, each one getting paid when the investment succeeded. It was brilliant. It was also fragile. What do? We slow down. We diversify. We make some intentionally mediocre investments to muddy the pattern, and we need to be more careful about how we're gathering information. That night, Marcus called an emergency meeting. Not in person. Too risky. A group chat, encrypted, everyone using pseudonyms. He explained the situation, explained the scrutiny, explained that they needed to change their approach or stop entirely. Darius was the first to respond. I need this money. My mom's medication costs $800 a month. Insurance won't cover it. I can't stop. Keisha, I paid off 2 credit cards. I'm catching up on rent. This is the first time in 5 years I've had savings. We just need to be smarter. Marcus agreed. They would continue, but with new protocols. No more direct trading on information less than 2 weeks old. No more concentration in single investments. More verification, more caution, more layers between the information and the action. It worked for a while. By March, Marcus had $18, a $2 in his investment account. He'd paid off Sarah's remaining medical debt. He'd bought Zoe a new winter coat, not from Walmart, but from a real store. He'd fixed the check engine light in his car. Small victories, fragile progress. Then Pemberton showed up again. It was a Tuesday night, late March, unseasonably warm. Marcus was delivering Thai food to an address 3 blocks from Pemberton's estate. As he pulled up, he saw the Mercedes S-Class parked in the driveway. Pemberton was the customer. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He considered cancelling the delivery, taking the hit to his rating, but something stubborn in him refused. He walked to the door and rang the bell. Pemberton answered. Still in work clothes, tie loosened. He looked at Marcus without recognition, took the food, and started to close the door. Mr. Pemberton, Marcus heard himself say. Pemberton paused. Yes? We met before. Last October. You asked me to show you one smart move. Now Pemberton looked at him, really looked. A moment of confusion, then vague recollection. The delivery driver. Right. I made that smart move, Marcus said. Actually, I made several. Good for you. Pemberton's tone was dismissive, already turning away. I turned $500 into $18,000 in 5 months. That stopped him. Pemberton turned back, something sharp in his expression now. Excuse me? Real estate investments, local developments, pattern recognition, and timing. The things you said poor people don't understand. Pemberton's face went through several expressions: surprise, skepticism, something that might have been respect. You're lying. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his investment app, showed him the portfolio balance. $18,240.33. Pemberton stared at the screen. How? By paying attention, by being invisible, by using advantages you don't even know exist. There was a long silence. Then Pemberton did something unexpected. He laughed, not mockingly but with genuine surprise. Well, I'll be damned. He looked at Marcus with new eyes. What's your background? MBA from UConn, worked in insurance before downsizing. I'm not stupid, Mr. Pemberton. I'm just broke. There's a difference. Pemberton nodded slowly. There is indeed. He paused, seemed to make a decision. You want to come in? I'd like to hear more about this. Marcus hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger. This was how people like Pemberton operated. They identified talent, absorbed it, controlled it. I have other deliveries, Marcus said. Cancel them. I'll pay you for the evening. $500 for an hour of conversation. $500. The exact amount Marcus had started with. Why? Because you did something interesting and I'm curious. Because maybe I was wrong about you. Or maybe I'm about to explain to you exactly how you got lucky and it won't happen again. Either way, it's worth an hour. Marcus made the calculation in his head. $500, no delivery platform fees, no gas, no wear on his car, just conversation. Okay, he said. Inside Pemberton's house, Marcus sat at a kitchen island that probably cost more than his annual salary. Pemberton poured 2 glasses of scotch, slid one across to Marcus. The scotch was amber, expensive looking. Marcus didn't drink much, couldn't afford to, but he took a sip. It burned smooth, tasted like oak and smoke and money. Macallan 25, Pemberton said, watching Marcus's reaction. $400 a bottle. Can you taste the difference between this and the cheap stuff? Honestly, no. Pemberton smiled. Most people can't, but they pretend to. That's the real difference between wealth and poverty, not the money itself, but the performance of it. You're honest. I like that. You said you wanted to hear about my investment strategy. I do, but first, tell me about you. MBA from UConn, that's respectable. Papers on urban development, that shows intellectual capacity. So what happened? How does someone with your credentials end up delivering pad thai? Marcus felt the familiar shame rise in his throat, but he swallowed it. My wife got sick, cancer. The medical bills destroyed us financially. Then I got laid off. Then she died. Then I was a single father with debt and no safety net. Pemberton nodded slowly. I'm sorry for your loss, truly. But here's what I want to understand. Why didn't you rebuild? Why delivery driving instead of leveraging your education? I applied to 147 jobs in the first year after the layoff. Got 12 interviews. 3 made it to the second round. None made offers. When you've got a gap in your resume and medical debt on your credit report, doors close fast. So you gave up? I survived. Marcus felt anger flicker. There's a difference. Is there? Pemberton leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, survival and giving up look remarkably similar. You accepted a diminished role. You stopped fighting for what you're capable of. I didn't have the luxury of fighting. I had a daughter to feed. And now? Pemberton gestured to Marcus's phone, where the investment app was still visible. Now you're fighting. What changed? And Marcus thought about the $20 bill on the floor, about Pemberton's casual cruelty, about 2 years of being invisible and angry and tired of both. You did, Marcus said quietly. You asked me to show you one smart move, and I realized I'd been so focused on survival that I'd forgotten I was capable of strategy. Pemberton's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe respect. So I motivated you through insult. Interesting. You reminded me who I used to be. And who was that? Someone who saw opportunities, someone who understood that information is currency, someone who wasn't afraid to take calculated risks. The Mitchell Road investment, Pemberton said. Walk me through it. How did you identify the opportunity? Marcus explained. The overheard conversation, the public records research, the pattern recognition that led him to see what was coming before it was obvious. Pemberton listened, asked sharp questions about verification, about risk assessment, about timing. You're using information asymmetry, he said finally. You're in places where data flows freely because people assume you're irrelevant. That's actually brilliant. Thank you. But it's also a house of cards. What happens when your sources dry up, when people stop talking freely around you, when the development projects you're betting on fall through? That's why I'm diversifying. Not just real estate, looking at retail patterns, employment trends, infrastructure projects. Building a comprehensive picture instead of betting on single events. Pemberton smiled, but there was something predatory in it. You've thought this through. I have. And you're doing this with how much capital? Started with 500. I'm up to about 1,200 now. My partner has more. He's the one making the substantial investments. Kevin Chen, Pemberton said. Marcus went cold. How do you know his name? I know a lot of things. Mid-level fund manager at Hartford Financial. Decent track record, nothing spectacular. Until recently. He's been making some remarkably well-timed investments in local commercial properties. That caught people's attention. Legal investments based on public information. Legal, yes, but unusual. And when things are unusual, people get curious. People like me. The threat was subtle but clear. Pemberton wasn't just interested in Marcus's method, he was investigating it. Why do you care? Marcus asked. Because information networks are valuable, because I'm always looking for competitive advantages, and because I want to know if you're a genuine talent or just someone who got lucky once. Mike, they talked for 90 minutes. Pemberton asked about Marcus's investment strategy, his risk tolerance, his long-term goals. Marcus answered honestly, aware that every word was being evaluated, measured against some invisible standard. Finally, Pemberton said, I want to invest in you. What? $500,000, seed capital. I'll be a silent partner. You continue doing what you're doing, but with real money behind you. We split profits 60-40, my favor. Marcus felt dizzy. $500,000. It was more money than he'd ever imagined having access to. Why would you do that? Because you've proven you can see opportunities others miss, because I'm always looking for asymmetric bets, and because I like being right. I told you poor people make poor decisions. If I invest in you and you succeed, that proves I was wrong, and I like being proven wrong occasionally. Keeps me sharp. It was a trap. Every instinct told Marcus it was a trap. Pemberton didn't want a partner. He wanted to subsume Marcus's operation, control it, own it. I need to think about it, Marcus said. Of course, take a week. But understand, this offer has an expiration date. Marcus left with $500 in cash and a proposition that could change everything or destroy everything he'd built. He didn't sleep that night. He ran scenarios. With Pemberton's capital, the network could scale. Real investments, real returns. But at what cost? Control, independence. The very thing that made the network valuable, its grassroots nature, its invisibility, would be compromised. He called Kevin the next morning. Don't do it, Kevin said immediately. I know it's tempting, but guys like Pemberton don't make offers like that out of generosity. He sees you as a threat or as a resource to be exploited. Either way, you lose your autonomy. But the money. We'll find other money, clean money. You've got a track record now. There are ethical investors who'd back you without turning you into a puppet. Marcus knew Kevin was right. But $500,000, the security, the possibilities. He spent the week in agony, balancing between the safe choice and the transformative choice. On day 6, he got a call from Darius. "We have a problem," Darius said. "Big problem." They met at the same gas station late at night. Darius looked scared. "One of the networking," he said. "Keisha. She got approached by someone, a lawyer, asking questions about how she knew to invest in certain properties, asking about information sources." Marcus felt his blood go cold. What did she say? Nothing. She played dumb. But Marcus, someone's connecting dots. Someone knows we exist. It could have been coincidence. It could have been Pemberton running background on Marcus before committing his money. It could have been the compliance investigation Kevin had warned about. Or it could have been something worse. That night, Marcus made his decision. He called Pemberton. "I appreciate the offer," Marcus said, "but I'm going to decline." Silence on the other end. Then, "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." "You understand what you're turning down? The resources, the network, the legitimacy?" "I understand, but I also understand that some things can't be bought. Independence is one of them." Pemberton's voice went cold. "You think you're special. You think you've figured out something no one else has. But you're playing in a world where people like me write the rules. And eventually, you'll learn that." He hung up. Marcus sat in his car, shaking. He'd just turned down $500,000. He'd just made an enemy of one of the most powerful men in Fairfield County, and he had no idea if he'd made the right choice. When he got home, Zoe was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with homework spread around her. "Daddy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby. You look sad." He sat down across from her. "I had to make a big decision today, and I'm not sure if I did the right thing." "Did you do what you thought was right?" "Yes." "Then it was the right thing." She said it with such certainty, such simple child logic. Marcus pulled her into a hug, felt tears he'd been holding back start to break free. "I love you so much," he whispered. "I love you too, Daddy." Outside, winter was finally losing its grip. Spring was coming. And with it, consequences Marcus couldn't yet see, but he'd made his choice. For better or worse, he would live with it. The investigation came in April. Not from the SEC, as Marcus had feared, from a private investigator hired by a real estate development firm that had lost a bid on a property Marcus's network had helped Kevin invest in. They wanted to know how a small investment fund had gotten ahead of their $1 million research operation. The first Marcus heard of it was a call from Kevin at 6:47 a.m. "Don't panic," Kevin said, which immediately made Marcus panic. "What happened?" "A PI showed up at my office yesterday, asking questions about my investment decisions over the past 6 months, specifically about the Hartfield-adjacent properties and the Stamford waterfront deal." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He was in his car, about to start a morning delivery shift. Through the windshield, he could see the sun rising over the shopping center parking lot, ordinary and indifferent. "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that I make investments based on publicly available information and market analysis. They asked if I had any special sources. I said no, which is technically true. You're not a source, you're a partner." That's a thin distinction. It's the distinction that keeps us legal. But Marcus, they're not stopping with me. They're going to look into everyone connected to these deals. They're going to interview property owners, city council members, development firms. If anyone mentions seeing delivery drivers hanging around, asking questions, we don't ask questions. We just listen. I know, but perception matters. If they start connecting dots, if they build a narrative about a coordinated information-gathering operation, then we're done, Marcus finished. They were quiet for a moment. Marcus watched a woman pushing a shopping cart across the parking lot. She looked tired, wore a grocery store uniform, probably heading to an early shift. Probably worried about bills and rent and all the same things that had consumed Marcus before he'd decided to fight back. "We need to shut it down," Kevin said, "at least temporarily. No new intelligence, no new investments based on local information. We diversify into standard index funds, municipal bonds, conservative plays. Let the heat die down." "For how long?" "I don't know. Months, maybe. Could be a year." Marcus thought about the network, about Darius, who'd just paid off his mother's medication bills, about Keisha, who'd been saving for her daughter's college fund, about the others who'd finally found a way to make their invisible work valuable. "I need to tell them," Marcus said. "Be careful. No phones, no digital trails." "I know." Marcus called an emergency meeting that night. Not encrypted messaging. Too risky now. In person at a rest stop off I-95, the kind of anonymous public place where 5 people meeting wouldn't draw attention. They gathered near the vending machines. Darius, Keisha, a woman named Monica who cleaned offices in Stamford, a guy named James who drove for Lyft, and Marcus, people who'd been invisible their whole lives, suddenly terrified that someone was finally seeing them. "We're being investigated," Marcus said without preamble. "Not by the government, by a private firm. They're trying to figure out how Kevin's fund has been making such good investments." "Are we in legal trouble?" Keisha asked. "Not yet. We haven't broken any laws. But if they keep digging, if they find a pattern, if they build a case that we're operating some kind of organized intelligence network." "But we are," Monica said. She was in her 50s, had 3 kids, worked 60 hours a week, cleaning rich people's offices. "That's exactly what we're doing." "We're sharing observations," Marcus corrected. "Legally distinct." "Is it, though?" James leaned against a vending machine. "We're systematically gathering information, coordinating our efforts, profiting from insider knowledge. How is that not illegal?" "Because it's not insider knowledge. It's public information. It's things people say in public places, at public meetings, in conversations they choose to have in front of us. We're not hacking emails or breaking into offices. We're just paying attention." "Tell that to the investigator," Darius said. Marcus rubbed his face. He was exhausted. He'd been up for 20 hours straight, alternating between deliveries and panic. "Kevin thinks we should shut down. Stop gathering intelligence. Stop making local investments. Wait until the scrutiny passes." "For how long?" Keisha asked. "Months, maybe a year." "I can't wait a year," Monica said. "I need this income. My daughter needs braces. My car is dying. I'm barely holding on as it is." "We're all barely holding on," Darius said. "That's why we're doing this in the first place." They looked at each other. 5 people bound by desperation and the fragile hope that intelligence could be a currency they could actually use. "What if we don't stop?" James asked quietly. "Then we risk everything," Marcus said. "Legal action, public exposure, loss of our day jobs, possibly worse." "But if we stop now, we're back to being invisible," Keisha said. "Back to accepting that our knowledge doesn't matter, that we're only valuable as labor, never as intelligence." Marcus understood. He'd felt the same way. The past few months had given him something he hadn't had in years: agency, the belief that he could shape outcomes instead of just enduring them. Giving that up felt like dying. "I'm going to leave the decision to you," Marcus said. "I'll support whatever you choose. If you want to continue, we continue, but we need to be smarter, more careful, more paranoid. If you want to stop, we stop, and maybe we try again in a year when things cool down." They voted. It wasn't unanimous. Monica and one other member wanted to stop, wanted to protect what they'd already gained. But Darius, Keisha, and James wanted to continue. In the end, they compromised. They'd reduce activity to essential intelligence only. They'd add more verification steps. They'd create more distance between information gathering and investment decisions, and if anyone felt uncomfortable, they could leave, no questions asked. Over the next 2 weeks, 2 members left the network. Monica and a younger guy who'd gotten scared after the investigator started interviewing people in his neighborhood. The remaining members became ghosts. They communicated less, verified more, moved slower. The flow of intelligence decreased, but what came through was higher quality, more certain. Kevin's lawyer handled the investigation with careful precision. Depositions, document requests, weeks of stress that aged both men visibly. In the end, the investigator found nothing illegal. Everything Marcus had done was technically above board. Public information, pattern recognition, timing, but the report noted unusual coordination and systematic intelligence gathering and recommended continued monitoring. By May, it was just Marcus and Darius left, and the investment portfolio that had grown to $34 had dropped to $19 after a bad bet on a commercial development that fell through. Marcus hits rock bottom again, back to delivery work. Mounting bills, a failing car, and the fear that his vision was just luck. As everything collapses, including his car breaking down, he's offered a lifeline when Kevin tells him a legitimate investment firm wants to hire him to build a formal intelligence division. The offer provides stability, benefits, and legality, but requires shutting down the informal network. Marcus accepts on the condition that he can bring Darius and build his own team. At the firm, Marcus and Darius formalize their methods, using public data, pattern recognition, and legal analysis, while preserving the core insight that valuable information flows through overlooked channels. Their division quickly becomes the firm's most successful unit. Marcus pays off his debts, improves his living situation, and provides stability for Zoe, redefining success through security and presence rather than wealth. Marcus later encounters Pemberton again and reaffirms that turning down his offer was the right choice because ownership and autonomy mattered more than fast capital. Reflecting on his journey, Marcus recognizes that he's rebuilt his life on his own terms. Proving intelligence and persistence can compete with inherited wealth. He begins teaching community college courses to service workers, showing them how to legally leverage information from their everyday jobs. His students start making small but meaningful gains, validating the model. Inspired, some form a worker-run intelligence cooperative, which Marcus mentors into a legitimate, sustainable business. As his influence grows, Marcus advances professionally. His salary increases and his impact multiplies through both his firm and his students. The story ends with Marcus continuing to climb, not toward elite wealth, but toward lasting agency, stability, and systemic change built from visibility reclaimed. But the number that mattered most wasn't his salary. It was the number of people he'd helped. Students who'd made their first investments, network members who'd paid off debt, cooperative members who were building wealth slowly and legally. After class, she approached him. "I clean houses in Greenwich. I hear things about renovations, about people moving, about properties coming on the market before they're listed. I never thought that information was worth anything." "It is," Marcus said. "It absolutely is. Just make sure you're operating ethically and legally. That's the line you can never cross." She smiled. "Can I take you to coffee sometime? I'd like to hear more about how you built your network." Marcus gave her his card. "Call me next week. I'm always looking for smart people." Walking to his car, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not satisfaction. He was too aware of how fragile everything still was. Not pride. He was too conscious of luck's role in his success. Hope. That was it. Genuine hope that the future could be different from the past, that effort and intelligence could compound, that the game wasn't entirely rigged. He drove home through streets he knew by heart, past neighborhoods where he'd delivered 1,000 meals, past the gas stations and convenience stores where he'd waited between orders. He wasn't delivering anymore, but he'd never forget what it felt like. The invisibility, the exhaustion, the quiet desperation of trying to survive rather than live. And he'd make sure that others didn't forget either, that someone was paying attention to the people everyone else ignored, that intelligence existed everywhere, in every economic bracket, waiting to be recognized and leveraged. 3 months later, Marcus received an email from an unexpected source, Richard Pemberton. Subject line, proposal. The email was brief. I have a project that requires your particular skill set. Significant compensation, complete autonomy. Interested? Marcus read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. But 3 days later, Pemberton showed up at Marcus's office, unannounced, unexpected, walking past the receptionist like he owned the place. You didn't respond to my email, Pemberton said, standing in Marcus's doorway. Marcus looked up from his computer. No, I didn't. Why not? Because I'm not interested. You don't even know what I'm offering. Marcus leaned back in his chair. 3 years ago, he would have been intimidated by this man, would have felt small in his presence. Now, he just felt tired. Mr. Pemberton, whatever you're offering, the answer is no. I don't work for you. I don't want to work for you. We're done. Pemberton smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. You're still angry about what I said that night, about the $20 bill. I'm not angry. I'm just not interested. You built something impressive, the intelligence division here, the teaching, the cooperative you helped establish. I've been following your progress. Why? Because I was wrong about you. I told you that poor people make poor decisions, and you proved that wasn't the issue. The issue was access. Once you had access to capital, to networks, to information, you thrived. That interested me. Marcus stood up. Is there a point to this conversation? The point is that I want to invest in your next venture. Whatever it is. $1 million, complete autonomy, no strings attached, just the opportunity to be part of whatever you build next. Why would you do that? Because money is boring when you already have it. But watching talented people build things with resources they were denied, that's interesting. That's the only thing that still feels like a game worth playing. Marcus walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot below. His leased Accord was down there, modest and reliable. Not far from it, Pemberton's Mercedes, sleek and expensive. You want to assuage your guilt, Marcus said. You want to feel like you're helping, like you're not part of the problem. Maybe. Does that change the value of the offer? Marcus rejects Pemberton's offer, explaining that it isn't partnership but charity meant to ease guilt. He argues that wealth is often mistaken for merit, that the system is rigged, and that real change comes from building new structures, not relying on those who control access. Even increasing the money wouldn't change his answer, because his work is about independence and systemic change, not funding. Marcus has built a modest but powerful system that helps invisible people turn intelligence and information into opportunity. It doesn't erase structural inequality, but it proves alternative models exist. He shifts his focus from individual success to collective action, teaching people how to organize, share knowledge, and build worker-centered institutions. His work gains attention from labor organizers, while his personal life becomes stable and grounded. He's present for his daughter, finds meaning in ordinary moments, and defines success not as wealth or revenge, but as freedom and security. Marcus begins teaching a course for workers like he once was, showing them how to use public information, pattern recognition, and networks to navigate a rigged system legally and strategically. He emphasizes that intelligence is everywhere, even without capital, and that invisibility can be an advantage. The change he's building is quiet and incremental, not a revolution, but a sustainable shift in access and awareness. What began as humiliation becomes a philosophy, not one smart move, but a sustained strategy, turning anger into purpose and knowledge into power.